Hello and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly gripping piece of narrative text called Steel Rails and Savage Souls. And honestly, we're going to be diving deep into the sheer mechanics of suspense, looking specifically at how a seemingly ordinary, everyday setting can just instantly transform into this claustrophobic pressure cooker of survival. I mean, if you've ever taken a train, a subway, or even just a crowded bus, you know the feeling, right? Being packed into a confined, moving space with a bunch of complete strangers. You trust the system. You trust that those doors are going to open at your destination. But what happens when that trust is violently shattered? Through this brilliant source text, we're exploring the anatomy of a literal outbreak, the absolute terror of a moving trap, and ultimately, taking a pretty dark look at human nature itself. We've mapped out exactly how the tension in this scenario escalates from 0 to 100, so let's get into it. Okay, let's dive into this right at the very beginning with the source's exact opening line. What if a normal train ride suddenly turned into a nightmare? It is such a perfect hook because it operates entirely on stark contrast. It takes something incredibly mundane, a standard everyday commute, and immediately injects it with unimaginable danger. Like, this isn't some haunted house, it's not a dark, spooky forest, it's literally just public transit. And the brilliance of this premise really lies in its relatability. When we board a train, our guard is completely down. We're reading a book, maybe we're listening to music, or just staring out the window. By proposing that this specific, super secure environment could suddenly turn into a nightmare, the text instantly bypasses our logical defenses and targets our most primal fears. Now, to make that nightmare actually effective, you first have to establish a baseline of complete normalcy, which brings us to our core subjects. The text introduces us to a father and his daughter. They board a train heading to Busan, and as the source explicitly notes, they are expecting a peaceful trip. Just sit with that image for a moment. It's quiet, it's familial, it's safe. There is this deep, comforting rhythm to settling into your seat for a long journey. You stow your luggage, you get comfortable, and you fully expect the rhythmic hum of the tracks to just lull you into relaxation. The source text uses this deceptive calm so perfectly. It gives us these relatable, vulnerable characters who are entirely unaware that they are basically stepping right into a cage. This peaceful expectation is the emotional anchor of the entire scenario. It makes the ensuing violence hit so much harder, simply because the starting point was so incredibly gentle. Let's move to and see how this builds, because that peaceful expectation is shattered in a split second. The source tells us, just before departure, a strange infected girl jumps onto the train. This is the catalyst. Notice the exact timing here, just before departure. It's that fleeting, tiny window of time when the doors are literally closing. There is absolutely no time for security to intervene. The train is committed to its journey, and, well, so is everyone on it. The text identifies her as an unnoticed threat. She is the spark that's going to ignite the powder keg, but because she slips on right at the very last second, the passengers remain locked in their state of deceptive calm. The doors lock, the train accelerates, and the danger, it is now officially inside the walls with them. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the source maps the exponential acceleration of this horror perfectly. Think about the timeline. At first, nobody notices anything. Silence, normalcy. Then, suddenly, she starts shaking violently. An attack on a passenger. Boom. The illusion of safety is totally shattered. And then, within minutes, chaos explodes. The structure of this text moves like a bullet. It mirrors the speed of the infection itself. There is no slow buildup, no hours of careful investigation. It goes from absolute zero to total anarchy in mere minutes. That rapid sequence, from total ignorance to a physical symptom to a violent attack to utter chaos, is what makes the scenario so terrifyingly overwhelming. You literally don't even have time to process what you are looking at before you have to fight for your life. And that chaos multiplies with terrifying speed. The source notes that people turn into terrifying zombies one by one. Now, really think about the actual geography of a train car. It is essentially a long, narrow tube. There are seats blocking your path, luggage scattered in the aisles, and thick glass windows that you definitely cannot easily break. When an infection spreads one by one in this environment, the danger is essentially duplicating itself inside a locked box. Every single person who falls to the attack doesn't just die, they immediately become a brand new attacker. The uninfected passengers are constantly pushed back, car by car, bottlenecked in these incredibly narrow aisles. The text describes this as everyone being trapped. And it's an inescapable trap because there is literally nowhere sideways to run. You can only retreat deeper and deeper into the moving prison. So the crucial point is really captured in 3 stark, uncompromising truths laid out by the source text. Trapped on board. No escape, no stopping. The physical environment has become just as deadly as the zombies themselves. You can't just run out the front door like you would in a house. You can't just sprint off into the woods. You are hurtling down steel rails at hundreds of miles an hour. The forward momentum of the train is basically a weapon. It means the authorities on the outside can't easily help you, and you definitely can't easily get off. No escape and no stopping are absolute, uncompromising rules of this scenario. It creates a state of total, undeniable hopelessness regarding their physical surroundings. The passengers are completely isolated from the rest of the world, left entirely to their own devices. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate darkest twist of the entire narrative. The source text asks us a pretty profound question. What is actually the scariest part? You would naturally think it's the terrifying zombies, right? The mindless, violent, infected horde. But the text explicitly states that the danger isn't only the zombies. The true danger, the most horrifying element of all, is the people willing to sacrifice others just to survive. This is where the story shifts from a simple horror survival scenario into a deep psychological morality test. When you put ordinary people in a pressure cooker with absolutely no escape, the social contract completely disintegrates. The terrifying zombies are predictable. They act on pure instinct. But human selfishness? That is totally unpredictable. That is calculating. The realization that the person sitting right next to you, another perfectly healthy human being, might literally throw you to the monsters just to buy themselves another 5 seconds of life, that is a far more savage soul than any mindless zombie. Which brings us to the final, lingering thought presented by our source text. It turns the mirror directly onto us. Would you survive this train ride? Knowing that you are trapped in a narrow metal tube going hundreds of miles an hour, knowing that the infection is multiplying by the minute, and knowing, perhaps most importantly, that the other survivors might actually be your greatest threat. It really forces you to ask yourself, in that inescapable trap, who would you become? Would you be the one helping the vulnerable, like the father and daughter? Or would you be the one willing to sacrifice others just to survive? It's a haunting scenario flawlessly executed by just a few simple, terrifying concepts. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I'll leave you with that to think about.